She'll be back in a minute. Oh, there she is. All right, good.
Hi everybody, this is MaDonna from Mad Bees Quilting. So I don't even know where I'm at today, but I am here today, and as promised, I told you we would work on binding today. So we did attach our binding last week, so I've got it sewn onto my quilt all the way around. And remember, I showed you how to put your little ends together, and so hopefully you remember to sew across the waist and not up and down through the crotch. And so today we're going to actually do the last finishing portion of this. And so the last finishing portion is some handwork. And that's the way I'm choosing to do this one. There are other techniques to be able to do it with your sewing machine, but today we're going to do some handwork. I'm going to do an abbreviated version. I'm going to actually start near one of the corners because I figure that's the hardest part for you to get going. So right now I'm at the ironing board, and I'm going to press this, and then I'm going to make sure that I've trimmed up all my threads. Then we'll sit down and I'll actually do some hand sewing for you. So I am working from the front side of my quilt, and I'm going to be right here in this corner section. And in this corner section, you can see I've got some thread tails that I need to clean up, or some fabric tails I need to clean up, and I've got some thread tails I want to clean up. I want to make sure all of this looks beautiful before I get started on doing my binding. So I'm just going to go along and trim up all of these yucky little threads here so I don't have anything sticking out. Trim, trim, trim. And you can see how nice my corner is standing up here. Yikes, I have a mess here. I think I should have done a little of this beforehand, but this is kind of what it's going to look like, okay? It's going to have some threads and some strings and some pieces and parts. I've got here where my two little mitered pieces are going together. I want to trim all that off. So look at it, it's already looking so nice and neat there. Okay, so I've trimmed. Now I'm going to press, and I'm going to press it all flattened down. So I'm going to just come from my corner, get right into my corner there, and just give this a nice press. That looks gorgeous. Now I'm going to flip it to the other side. Ooh, it's hot. When I flip it, I want to just let this corner turn nicely. See how that just kind of flips over and turns real nice for me? Because I've pressed it well. I see one, oh no, that's actually my quilting there. Now I'm going to turn this right over, and I'm going to be on the back side of that exact same corner. Okay, so I've got it here to the back side. There's that corner there. I'm going to push my point into that corner so that way it gives it a little bit of strength to it, but it's also going to make it lay really nicely. And then I'm going to come right here and I'm going to press this down so that I get a little bit of a crease into this outside edge here. So I'm just going to put my iron on there and give that a little bit of a press. And I'm using strength on it. I'm really pushing it down. It's going to still want to pop open, but it's going to help it so it lays nicely. Since that went that way, now I'm going to go the other way with the other corner there. So I'm just folding that in. So see how nicely that mitered there? Can we see it, Deanna? Mm-hmm. Okay, so it really miters in there really, really nicely. And I'm going to hold that there, and I'm going to give that a nice press. So I've already made a beautiful looking corner, even though I haven't sewn it down. Okay, so this is going to just piece in there really nicely. Now we have two ways of doing this next step. We can use the little binder clips to hold this in place. We can use pins, and so three ways. Pins, or we can use a little bit of the glue basted. This is one of Roxanne's products, and I love it, okay? When you use it, it comes out of this super teeny tiny nozzle, and it comes out in little bitty polka dots. So it'll go on like a little line, and then as it sits there, it turns into little bitty beads. Those beads are perfect. That's all you need. You don't need much of this. Pull back your seam, put it back on top of there, hit it with the iron, and it'll glue it into place for us. Look at how sweet that is, okay? Now, right in this corner here, I'm going to put a dot right there. Maybe. There we go. A dot there, and then right on this edge again. And then I'm going to fold that in. So that little dot of glue there is going to hold that in place for us. Hit it with our iron. Perfect. And look at how it held it. Really nice. Make sure you put your lid back on your glue based it. And we're going to move over now to the table here, and we're going to hand sew this in place. Okay, let's move on over.
Joanne Hathcock agrees with you completely. She said, this is exactly how I do it.
Perfect. We like to hear that. Okay,
Yes.
so now I'm at the table, and you're probably going to want to be right over here, Deanna. Sorry, everybody, if I'm making you a little bit of motion sickness. Okay, so I may not do this anyway the way that you're used to doing it. We all have our method to our madness, and this was what works for me. You have to decide what works for you. I like cotton thread a lot for all of my piecing. I love isocord or any kind of embroidery thread for actually doing the binding with. This here is a utility quilt. It's going to be washed 100 million times. This edge here, even with me hand sewing it, is going to probably take the most wear of all of it just because it's got a little bit of a lip to it. So when I do this, I'm using, this is a 40 weight embroidery thread, and I'm just going to cut myself a piece, and this color matches to me, to this, to the background. I could use the white or the teal, just as your preference, and I'm going to cut myself a piece of this. I do have with me the bow and needle threader, because that makes my life a lot easier. Okay, wait, MaDonna, what'd you do there? You're supposed to cut this. Nope, it didn't cut. Okay, I guess we'll use scissors to cut it today. Okay, so love the needle threader. Really works well. These are Clover black gold needles. They're a size 10. They're super sharp, and they also have a little bit of a coating on it. Oh, I don't want that little one. I want the 10. They have a little bit of a coating on them. You can kind of see how it's a little bit darker there. And that coating just gives it a little bit of texture for me to be able to pull through. So I'm going to put my needle down into my needle threader. I'm going to floss my thread. And then I'm just going to push on the button. Okay, I guess this is the one that doesn't work. This has been used, oh no, it went through a million bazillion times. Oh, wait. There's a magnet on the bottom, MaDonna. You know that. I know that, and I was still trying to do it the old way. Okay, so let's put this back in there. Put this right in here. Pop it through. You know, how come things don't work when you're on TV? I saw it in there a second ago. You can hear it's not going through.
It's being ornery.
Well,
Because we just used it on Saturday. Let's see.
see if I can get this through here. Oh, wait, write that down. Okay. So I put a traditional knot at the end of here. I don't do anything fancy. I just put a single knot on the end. Nothing crazy. And I try to keep a nice short thread because I actually take my thread backwards first. So most of the time when we're sewing this, we go up and around the corner, okay? To put my thread and to bury it, I actually come backwards first. So I'm going to come down towards me in my seam allowance here. So I come down this way and through my fabric, and it doesn't matter how long this stitch is, and then I just gently pull on it so that it's right there. So see, it's just sitting in the fabric. I then can put my binding over the top of that thread tail, and it's there. Now I'm going to start my first stitch. So I'm going to do a little bitty bite into my fabric, and then I'm going to glide underneath in the quilt itself. I'm going to do a little bitty bite in my fabric, and then I'm going to glide underneath. A little bitty bite in my fabric, and then I'm going to glide underneath.
So you started it by going towards you, but then when you
Correct.
actually are sewing, you're going away.
Right, that way the thread, if it pulls at all, it's got to come the wrong way. Even though I'm going this way, that way it's going the opposite direction, that little tail that I started with.
Ah.
And I do these about 1/4 of an inch apart, my little stitches. And I do give them a pretty good tug. I just don't want to pull it crazy because I don't want to rip the fabric. And this thread, you can see it buries in there really nice because of the color choice. And we're going to go all the way up into this corner so I can show you how to do the corner. So I'm just barely biting into my binding and gliding underneath my into my quilt layers. Bite. Okay, so I want to get to this corner so I can show you how I do a corner. Now you do have to be careful because it's easy enough to create a stitch on the other side on your quilt. So you just have to be careful how deep you're going, and that's why a shorter needle works nice, because you don't have a tendency to grab too much. Okay, so now I'm going to do the stitch that's going to go into my corner here. So I'm going to go underneath, glide underneath, and I'm going to go right up and into where that intersects there. So I am right where this side here and this side here intersect. I'm just going to bite right into there. And now I'm actually going to go up and into this little bit of the miter there. And I'm going to bite into that binding right there. So can you see where I came up there? Okay, I came right up there. I'm going to grab that little stitch there and I'm going to turn and come back down. So I've got one little stitch out there. I just like that. I feel like I just am going to hold my quilt better together there. So you can't even see the thread unless you get really super close to it. And then I'm going to go back in and glide. I'm going to glide in under my quilt and I'm going to just bite into that binding. Glide into my quilt, bite into that binding. Now, for many years, I used to do it very different. And I shouldn't say very different, just a different thought process. I used to glide into my binding. Okay, so let's do a little piece here. I used to stick into my binding edge, okay, like so. So my needle is actually running in my binding, the glide, and then I would just do a little bite into the quilt. And now today it's going to be hard because, you know, I haven't done it in a long time. So then I would come back into my binding, okay, into my binding and glide along to the 1/4 of an inch. And the reason I did it that way was because then I felt like when it tugged on it, it tugged that whole long piece. But it's just preferences, it's just different ways that people like to do it. I use my fingers to hold this. A lot of people use clips. This is super comfortable for me to work it, but you have to figure out what works for you. I have heard people who go the other direction. So it's all your way of doing it. I do love these needles because they do have enough texture on them to be able to hold it and pull it through. If I use a thimble, I do like these little leather thimbles that we have. We just re-stick them onto here. We can peel them off. And this is the spot that I like it, is right in here. Because then that way, when I'm going into here, I've got it here, you can see it's sitting right on there. Okay, so I don't even have to think about it. It's sitting on that spot in my finger. And it just glides and pull it through. And it's right back there. I get ready to go again. I put it in there. And I mean, it just, I don't know why, it just fits right there. So it's where you need it that you put your thimble. Don't ever follow what anybody else tells you. I have seen people put it right here on this part of their finger because that's where they feel like they get sore. So that's how you do your binding. When you get to the ends, you need to tie it off. And I, again, do the same thing. I just do one little knot. So I'm going to tie off right here so you can see. I'm going to go in here. I've glided underneath. I'm pulling to the top. I'm going to come right in here, and I'm going to do one full stitch right in that spot. So I'm going to go right back onto myself there. So I'm just, and then I'm going to pull through the top here. And once I get close, I'm going to go through the loop. Oops, don't drop your needle. Okay, I'm going to pull through the loop. Okay, and my thread wouldn't be anywhere near this long. So I've got a little knot right there, okay? Then I take my thread, again, the opposite way and go back down the other way and come out. Come on, go right there. So I've come back the opposite way again with my thread. Pull it, pull it, pull it, give it a little bit of a tug, and then cut it right off. That way my thread tail is now buried the opposite direction. So I've started going the opposite way and I ended it with it going the opposite way. And that way it won't be pulling out as it gets washed. You won't see those tails coming back at you at some point in time. What else do we need to know? Anybody got some questions for me today?
Not that I can see.
We're very early this morning.
There's I have a question though.
Yes.
When you're biting into your quilt,
Yes.
do you want to grab any of the batting, or are you really just trying to grab the backing there?
I'm really trying to grab the backing. If I
Okay.
get through to the batting, I'm almost biting in a little bit deep.
Okay.
So yeah, really try to stay more surface with it.
Okay.
Correct. Will you grab me the baby bargello pattern from over there?
Oh yeah.
That was a really good question though, Deanna.
And Patty says hello.
Good morning, Patty. Patty is still in Utah, but she's heading home, and we'll be happy to see her. Isn't it laying right there? Your left hand, the baby bargello pattern. The pattern. The pattern. So Patty, is this how you bind? Let's find out from Patty. Okay, so beginning next week, we are going to start working on the baby bargello pattern. And it's called a baby bargello because of the size of it. It isn't because it's only for baby quilts, okay? So I picked out a great group of fabrics, actually just scrappy looking, but in a color rainbow way. And we'll start working on that next week. And so we're gonna do some techniques, and we may back up and do some of the same things that we've done here, but sometimes hearing it and seeing it again and differently makes sense for some people. So this pattern is available in the store. It's $2.50 for the pattern, and then it takes 3/8 of a yard of 12 different fabrics to be able to do this, and then whatever you want to use for binding. I would not try to change too much of it, because you really want to follow the instructions so that way we're all on the same page going through this. In store, we will schedule this class for the midsummer. So if that's something you want to try with me in the store, it's a great way to be able to do that. So that's what I have for this Monday. Tomorrow we are on Comment Sold at 5:15. Join us then and see what new tool I have, and we'll have a great week, okay?
Patty says, nope, I machine bind.
Oh, she machine binds. Okay, so I think in the baby bargello class, when we get to the binding portion, I will do it by machine so you can see that. So, because I don't mind doing both. There are times where each one of them has a purpose. So, excellent. Good deal. Thank you, everybody. Have a great week.